right, team, we are back with another Ramped Careers Daily Update. Per usual, I'm here with my esteemed co-founder, Manoj. Manoj, how are you doing?
Doing well, doing better now that you call me esteemed. I don't think anyone has ever referred to me as esteemed, so I'll take it.
Hey, it's a Friday, so it's all got to be uplifting today.
For sure, man, for sure. Excited to connect with you. Looking forward to our topic of discussion today. I think it's a, somewhat touchy subject. People don't really talk about it as much. And, I'd love to kind of pick your brain on it as well.
Yeah, we want to jump into a topic that folks kind of shy away from, but we want to hit it head on, not directly related to sales, but everybody has encountered something like this if they've worked in any sort of professional environment, and that's difficult coworkers. So how do we deal with them? What's the right tactics? What are the right tactics? What are some strategies? And maybe what are some things not to do? Before that, we're going to jump into some news of the day. So a bit of salty, but also sweet news out of Utah, Manoj. It looks like while Utah lost around 27,500 jobs, they are leading the nation with the lowest unemployment rate. So seems like a good thing for Utah. I've actually heard of a few people moving to Salt Lake City from where I'm at on the West Coast. Is Utah the new jobs capital of the US?
It might be. I'm starting to see a lot of really good companies come out of Utah, especially tech businesses. Phenomenal unit economics and businesses that have not compromised bottom line for growth. There've just been some amazing companies that have come out of Utah. So, especially with this whole remote life where you can work from anywhere, I wouldn't be surprised if the state of Utah and Salt Lake City, Provo may just start showing up as small pockets of tech excellence.
That's right. Yeah, I've seen it for a few years now. There's been a trend where a business will pop up on the West Coast or Silicon Valley, and because it's much cheaper to hire, they'll pop up a sales office in Utah. There's some exceptional salespeople in Utah, specifically Provo, Salt Lake City area, and it's beautiful. I don't know if you've ever spent much time there, but I'm a skier, and the mountains are awesome. And the golf is great in the summer. It's very temperate. I mean, it could just be that's a state where people flock to. I guess the one downside maybe is it's landlocked, so you don't get the view of the ocean.
Well, you can't have it all. Well, I guess you could, depending on where you live. But I think that sounds amazing. We should have a ramp retreat there. But to your point, it's not just like Salt Lake City. I think there's going to be other pockets of excellence. I can see Phoenix kind of climbing up that ladder, relatively close to the Bay Area. As people are saying, I need more space. My dollar can go a long way. I'm going to move to Arizona. I see Miami starting to boom again from a tech perspective. There's a lot happening there. Close to the water. You'll probably be in the best shape of your life living in Miami, mostly because there's a lot of encouragement from everybody else. Like, man, everyone is fit there, like no other. So yeah, I think that might be the future where the balance of power is going to shift away from New York and San Francisco.
Yeah, it could be specifically in the short run too. So let's move into our core topic of the day, and that's dealing with difficult coworkers. So something we've all experienced. What is your advice for dealing with a difficult coworker?
Yeah, I mean, no one really preps you for this, right? You go through college, no one really teaches you how to deal with a difficult coworker. And most people are, kind of socially equipped to deal with difficult situations in an informal setting. But within the work context, it gets a little bit tricky. And it's even more tricky if the coworker is someone that you report to. And there's issues around balance of power, issues around fear of retribution. There's issues around what negative consequences will I have to bear. I think that there's larger thematic issues that we've seen in the past few years around harassment at work, women being treated differently and unfairly, and folks that, are minorities. They've also seen a lot of challenges in the workplace. So I think that this is a very large and significant issue. There's some tactical ways of dealing with it from, hey, what can I do personally? And I think there is also some societal changes that people have to make as a collective in order to see kind of long-term progress. So I'll start with the tactical. When I started out with my first job, I remember running into issues with this coworker. He wasn't necessarily my boss, but we were on the same level. And man, I didn't say anything. I just let it slide. But I think I was kind of bottling it up. And then one day in a conference room, I just lashed out. I couldn't control myself. And that was the end of it. He was was very quiet after it. We weren't necessarily friends, but it stopped. Like the annoyance and the pestering completely stopped. And I don't know, looking back, I don't know if it was the best way to deal with it. I felt like, if I could go back in time, I would have addressed it at the very outset and done it in a way where I can express my disappointment. I can diffuse the situation. There's so many things that you could do other than what I think is the natural instinct of a lot of people is to either bottle it up, let it slide, and then get pushed to the brink of you can't handle it anymore. So from a tactical perspective, I think that if you feel like you're treated unfairly, you feel like you have a conflict brewing, the best thing to do is to address it right away, right? And there's ways of addressing it without sounding confrontational. You can tell people how you feel. I think that's a discussion that most people don't have. It's okay to verbally share that this is how you feel and say, hey, when you say this, I feel aggravated, or I feel sad, I feel undermined, I feel overwhelmed. You'd be surprised at how well people can react if you couch your issues in those words. Now, there might be people that are just mean, nasty human beings that are biased, and that may not work. But at the very minimum, it's okay to kind of start there. I know that some of the larger companies have structures around it. If you work at a very large company, maybe you can go through HR. Maybe there's some recourse there. But to the extent possible, especially if you're not sure if someone is doing something intentionally or unintentionally, I think if you're able to, it's okay to bring it up and address it. Couch it in these terms is step one. So that I think is the first step. What have you kind of been through, if anything? And how do you deal with it?
Gotten along with everybody, so nothing's ever come up. No, no. Obviously, similar circumstances in my career where there's just someone I couldn't break through with, or potentially somebody I was managing or working alongside that we just didn't see eye to eye. And I think the thing that I've learned, and I'm not sure if it through life or it through work, has been two key guiding principles. And one is respect. There's a baseline of respect that you should treat people with that I think is just fundamentally instilled in you. I don't actually live by the golden rule there. I live by something I think that's a little higher. It's the platinum rule or the diamond rule. And that not just treat others how you would want to be treated, but treat them how in a perfect situation they would want to be treated. Because I don't know if they want to be treated like I would want to be treated. I want empathy there, and I want them to be treated the way that they would ideally love to be treated in a perfect world. So, and that comes from two ways. That comes from getting to know them on a personal level. So you have to really fundamentally understand who they are. So if you're really not seeing eye to eye, to get to know somebody, be proactive with them and take them out to coffee, take them out of the office setting, go on a walk, essentially reach out to them through Slack or through a messaging application and just check in on them and see if that can break the ice there. And the other way, I think, is just trying to understand where they come from, what their background is, what experiences they may have brought into this work situation to become who they are. And I think that will go a long way. Another way to deal with coworkers maybe that you don't necessarily get along with is approach the situation with calmness and with easiness and a lightheartedness. And I think I learned this most from practicing meditation. Being able to interact with your own thoughts in a much more mellow way has helped me interact with other folks in a much more mellow way. I don't mean not have an opinion and not necessarily express who you are, but I do mean when you're getting heated, it's okay to remove yourself from the situation for a little bit and just take some time for yourself before coming back with the answer. In our fast-paced environment, especially in tech, so many things are thrown at you all at once, and you often feel like compelled to respond to them all at once. While that could be good for some aspects of your day-to-day, for instance, responding to an email or a voicemail, you don't need to respond to every human interaction in that kind of flippant nature or with just that kind of vigor and immediacy. So take some time and assess the situation before you react or before you interact with that person. I think that will help alleviate some of the stress you are feeling in your own mind.
So those are good points. You've suggested a couple of things that we can do as someone that's on the receiving end, having to deal with a difficult coworker. Now let's just play another scenario out. There may be people that say, well, hey, Danny, that all sounds good. I've tried it, but these people are just unwilling to budge. Like, I am truly dealing with a nasty person that despite my best efforts of remaining calm, trying to reason with them, trying to ration with them, are now retaliating or behaving quickly. At that point, what can you realistically do? I think that, there may not be a good answer here beyond saying, well, I mean, it's tough, shit out of luck. See if you can, go through a more formal channel and see if you want to deal with with it. And if you're up for it, you can do it. If not, it's a toxic work environment, to find yourself a new home, right? So these are like a low-hanging fruit type of answer, but I just
Yep.
wanted to, in the interest of intellectual completeness, kind of think this through. What else can you do? What else can you possibly do if you're faced with a scenario where none of this works?
Yeah, it is a good question, because sometimes being a good person and a calm person don't necessarily get to the end resolution. And yes, ultimately, just I think remembering that you do have avenues at your company that can work, like HR administrator or escalating it to a manager, remembering that those exist at the worst possible scenario, I think that can work. I really feel strongly that if it escalates and there is some sort of yelling or shouting or even just frustration, number one, I would still recommend removing yourself from the situation in the immediate term. So take a walk, take a break, regain your composure. Number two, I would set up some time with that person after cooler heads prevail. So you don't need to address it necessarily in the moment when you're both fired up, but I would say, hey, look, let's figure out a time and potentially a place away from the office for us to communicate our positions in a much more calm nature. In that conversation, what I would do is work your absolute best to understand two things from that person. One, their intentions. And that's a simple question for them. It's, hey, I'm trying to understand your perspective. What are your intentions when you're talking to me about X issue or X thing that we disagree on? And then two, what the outcome is that they want. And then I would put that head on, like, what outcome do you want to achieve? And I would get to a place where you can both be honest with each other. You don't have to like everybody you work with. And if there's a situation where you're not going to end up liking this person, then you agree to that outcome, that's a suitable outcome, as long as you can work side by side with this person or people and you can treat each other with respect. So I think that's a fine, albeit not the best outcome, but if it's just going to get to that point, just remember that you're on the same team and that you can work respectfully next to each other. Just coming back to it, look, you've given it multiple attempts, you've tried to be calm, you've tried to set up conversations outside. Just remember, worst case scenario, you still have your management team to escalate.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Fortunately, it looks like it's a price that you have to pay for choosing to be a part of organized society and be a part of an organized business. I think that while it sounds facially unfair, where you say, listen, if someone's being unfair to me and I feel a certain way, why do I have to bear the burden of trying to resolve it? Why do I have to bear the burden of pulling them aside and having a difficult conversation? Like, am I not entitled to not having to deal with it in the first place? Reasonable question. But on the flip side, to your point, you may not fully uncover the reason as to why there's a conflict or why there's a disagreement or why there's tension, right? Because it might be a misunderstanding. It might be something else that is causing a certain type of behavior. And the only way that you can uncover it is by having that dialogue with the person, even though you may feel a certain way. And your suggestion of stepping away from immediate crisis mode and taking some time off to revisit it, may help you, kind of calm your nerves to have a open and honest dialogue. I think that's actually really good advice. And then, part B of the discussion, and I think that's a good place to wrap up, is if you were to go through the set of motions and it still doesn't work, then I'd say escalate it to management and, find a neutral arbiter to come and step in and resolve that issue. And if that doesn't work either, and you truly feel like you're in a completely toxic environment and it's not you, just the unfortunate cost of, like I said, working and being part of an organized society, you may have to find a new home. Now, again, I want to caveat all of this by saying that all of this only applies if you have a difficult coworker, but they're still operating within some sense of reason. They're not difficult because they're bigoted. They're not difficult because they're racist. They're not difficult because they're sexist or just, plain creepy. I feel like you can't reason or ration with them because that behavior inherently is irrational. So I definitely want to caveat this advice because I don't want any of our listeners to feel like, hey, listen, I've been targeted for X, Y, or Z. Should I still go reason with them? You absolutely shouldn't have to. There's no need to. So I feel like this is only something that kind of functions within one particular context.
And then maybe we should have expressed that at the beginning and just started with that. But there's a baseline where there's absolutely zero tolerance for, and I think you set the line pretty clearly. And I fundamentally echo that. Those behaviors that are just completely unacceptable and will never be tolerated should never be tolerated by you as well. And those can go straight to management. So it was a good discussion. I'm glad we unpacked a few things there, and let's go off and enjoy our weekends. And for Manoj, this has been Danny and another version of the REM Careers Daily Update. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye.